welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome. All right, we are back. I hope you guys loved last week's guest. I have an equally wonderful, amazing guest this week that you guys are going to love. Her name is Barbaris, and she is the owner of Always Creating Studio, Weddings, and Events. And she walks us through how she went from being a government contractor and then kind of being laid off from that job and then figuring out what's next and really starting up her businesses. And let me just tell you guys, I've been stalking her on Instagram for a while because I love floral, and she has like the best like floral arrangement pictures. Like she's so good at like staging things so they're like picture perfect. So if you haven't already, definitely go and check out her Instagram account, which she has 3: Always Creating Studio, Always Creating Blog, and Always Creating Digital. Anywho, know that Skype was acting a little funny the day we recorded, so there are just a couple of little bits and pieces where Skype goes out for a second, but it's only for a second, and the interview is still magnificent. One housekeeping thing, if you haven't already, be sure to go over to NacheSnow.com/time for my time management course, all right? How to organize your life to make time for your passion or passions. And in that course, I tell you guys all the things, let's declutter, how to organize your home. I dig into finances. I tell you how to track time. I give you a little exercise to do. We talk about sleep and time chunking and to-do lists. I give you an exercise for the to-do list. I teach you how to set up your personal calendar, how to manage your social media. So all the things that I do in order to have like a full-time job plus a couple of side hustles, it's in that course. It's in the course. So go check it out, NacheSnow.com/TIME to get all the details, okay? And then also I just want to say thank you to everybody who went out and rated the podcast. It really, 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 really helps the podcast. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate it. And I want to just say thank you to Brittany, who left me a review on Monday. And the title of her review was Dropping Gems in Gold, one of the most authentic and relatable business podcasts filled with marketing tips. Highly recommended. Listen and then share with someone you know. Brittany. So Brittany, thank you so much, because this podcast, I always say, is the slogan is everyday women doing extraordinary things. I think sometimes when we see, quote, celebrities or superstars in the media, we're always kind of like comparing ourselves or trying to be that person, right? Where we don't realize is the women right next to us are already doing extraordinary things. They're already living their dreams and making money doing what they love, be it as a side hustle or a full-time job. And so we need to look around us for inspiration instead of always going to magazines or the television or social media to like look at people and then think, oh my goodness, this is so out of my reach. I'll never get 100,000 followers. When it's like, actually, the gal next to you that has 300 followers is killing it, making over 6 figures a year doing what she loves. So Brittany, thank you for that review. Motivates me to keep going and hopefully to continue to provide you guys inspiration. Okay, so I already gave you guys a teaser about what Gloria is going to talk to us about. So let's just get on into it. Here we go. Hello, Glory. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Good morning.
I know, right?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I've been following you for a while on Instagram and
Thank
just
you.
love your work. So this is really
Really?
exciting to me because I like a very, I think, specific aesthetic, and a lot of times it revolves around florals. And your
Okay.
work has a lot of gorgeous florals. I mean, just like even the way you kind of set up like your photos and your events, it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I just love that aesthetic.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so flattered. I honestly, when I meet people and they say, well, I love your work, I'm like, really? You see it? But you know what I mean? Like, I love being a creative. I love being able to do what I do, even though it started as a hobby. And it's nice when, someone like yourself can say, I love your work. It makes me feel really good and actually allows me permission to accept the fact that what I've been doing all along is the right thing to do, is the right way, it's the right approach. So it's validation. So thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then before we like really dive into Always Creating Studio, like what were you doing before you started it?
Oh gosh. Wow. It's like, I feel like it's such a long story, but I'm going to try to keep it short. And if you hear barking, that's my zoo. We have like a zoo here.
No worries.
Um, well, I had actually been in government consulting. So I was a technical product manager, for the Department of Energy. And I've been at that job for probably about going on 4 years. So that was the last thing I did before like going full time as a planner, as an influencer, and being a creative entrepreneur. Prior to that, I started working in IT when I was about, I'm going to make myself really old now, but I don't care about it. But I started working in IT when I was about, I want to say 19 years old. Right after maybe 18, because I was still in college. I went to junior college in Wisconsin and got my computer science degree at 19. And I started working immediately within the field and worked on and off probably until I was like 23 when I decided to pursue modeling full time. Because growing up, everyone had always said, you're so tall, you have cheekbones, your skin should be a model. And so, of course, I listened to them. I did a little bit like in Milwaukee and then going out to Chicago. And then eventually, like I moved to Florida and worked as a model and then like waited tables. Like I was just living my life then. And I loved, let me tell you, those 3 years were the best 3 years of my life because I didn't feel, for me at the time, that I wanted to go straight into like a 4-year college like my dad wanted. I felt as though I wanted to take some time off and try to figure out what it is I wanted to do. My dad is a computer scientist, so of course he wants me to go in the direction in which he's going to or he is in. So I just needed some time, and I was able to do that, and then came back to like going back to school. Went to Mason, got my communications degree with concentration in PR. And I graduated back in 2008. And then from there, started working for a tech company. And so that sort of gave me more, that sort of like brought me back into my IT where I started, and I went off into hospitality and modeling, and then I came back in. So I started to work for a nonprofit building websites. So my first job out of college was actually, I had to redesign 40 different websites for 36 affiliate offices and like satellite sites. So it was really, really fun. And that's really when I got into social media and what is now known as social media.
Right.
Twitter was just launching at that time. Like the word tweet did not exist when I started using Twitter. Because we were all like just trying to figure it out.
Learning
and
it. Yeah.
No one knew what was happening. I don't even think Twitter knew how big this thing would get. I think they just created this platform, and it was just a new way for us to be able to talk to each other real time. And Facebook was just coming up too. Facebook pages. I learned that from scratch. It was so hard back then. But it was also like from like sort of like foundational like skills that I'm so happy that I was able to like, get. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I started like blogging too. Because I started to blog about social media marketing and social media so that I could share how we were using social media in our nonprofit to service low-income families and people with, diseases and cancer and things like that, and allowing other nonprofit to be able to share and also learn how we were using it and see how they can implement it within their own organization. So that's really like social media blog was like my first blog ever. And now like 11 years in, I'm like, it's insane so that's sort of like the long and short of how really I got started in like IT and what I used to do before doing this.
Interesting. Wow. So that's like it's a varied background, right? Like you have like a little bit of everything: IT, PR, absolutely. Fashion,
marketing, website. It's so interesting because when I have applied for jobs in the past, people are either going, "You're overqualified," or most recently, "We can't pay you," because they look at my resume and they go, I feel like I think one recruiter actually was kind enough to be open with me. She goes, "Your resume is very intimidating. So if someone says we can't afford to pay you, that's probably why." And I've always been one of those people that actually, I say yes. When it comes to my career, I've been able to say yes to different opportunities, even like interning at Northern Virginia Magazine. I would say yes because I didn't know where that would lead me. I didn't know what that experience is, how that's going to come in handy. And everything is kind of like lined up to the point where I'm like, wow. So, I actually love it. And everything I've learned is now poured into Always Creating Studio Weddings and Events. And I think that that's what makes me, and the way that I, onboard my client, that's what makes me different, because I'm using all of my technical skills, my project management skills, my communications, my design, my everything. And I'm really just hyper focusing it on each and every single couple. And that makes them feel as though, wow, you're just talking to us only. It's not templated. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Yeah.
So at what point, like, where were you working when you decided to start Always Creating Studio?
I actually was still working at the Department of Energy as a consultant. And actually, Always Creating Studio came out of Always Creating Blog.
Ah.
That's what a lot of people don't understand. And honestly, myself, I didn't even realize that my blog or my influencer space over at Always Creating Blog had actually grown to the point where I had to split it to Always Creating Studio. Right. I literally, I had this aha moment. I'm like, I actually have outgrown Always Creating Blog, because it's like fashion and lifestyle and travel, which is something, it's like my lifestyle anyway. So it feels like I'm just having fun. I just get paid to have fun every day.
Right.
But, 3 years ago, I think it was back in 2016, I had seen on Instagram, I think Natalie Frank, who's the creator of the Rising Tide Society. She had posted something on the Rising Tide Society saying, like, there was a Tuesday Together meetup in Leesburg. And I had seen that. That was in 2015, I think. And I said, oh, my God, there was this, meeting of like creatives right in my backyard. Like, why didn't I know about this? So I joined. And that's where I met a wedding photographer named Jeff Photography. So if you guys can check him out at Jeff Photo. And he had been planning a style shoot with other photographers, like 2 other photographers. And I had signed up to be a volunteer to help and be like an assistant on the shoot. I was getting a lot of great deals with like brands to do a lot of like product photography and product styling. So I was getting a lot of like brand work, and I was really, really into like flat lays. Like flat lays were my jam. Like I would wake up and I would create so many flat lays. It was as though I couldn't start my day without. It was like I don't drink coffee, but it was like coffee for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I showed up on that style shoot, and I helped any which way I could. I helped picked up the cake, and I took my daughter, and we all went. It was really fun, and that's really how I got into like wedding planning. That's when the track kind of went this way from the blog, from fashion and lifestyle to like wedding and styling and design. Because of that work, they started tagging me. I know it's long winded. You can cut this out, but I think I like to share this part of my journey because people think that you just start here and you automatically go to like success, right? There are so many different paths to get to where your dream is, to what your dream is. And mine is just like, it's literally like this, like zigzagging, and I'm just going full force with it. And that's how I'm always going to be. And so when they started tagging me in these photos, they were using Always Creating Blog. Well, that audience, the wedding audience, is not the same as the fashion lifestyle millennials that are following me. That have been following me.
Yeah.
And because it was always being part of my job as a brand marketing person that I have to be very specific about my audience in order for me to not so much as sell to them, but also speak to them, right? So I decided that I was going to split it. So instead of doing Always Creating Blog, I kept it going, but I did Always Creating Studio. And I started working exclusively with brands who really just hired me to create marketing assets for their social media or their website, but also using Always Creating Studio as a platform to work within the wedding industry. So it's specific to like styling and designing weddings or style shoots or editorials. And I started working a lot more with photographers who would hire me to so if they had a client that was rebranding and they were doing a headshot, I would go and shop for props. Like I would talk to their client, see what their rebrand is all about, get to learn more about them. And then I would go and shop for props to help do the flat lays and kind of help style the editorial so that the photographer can come in and just do his or her shoot. Yeah. And, a professionally styled shoot. So I did that for a lot of like 2016 into 2017. And then 2017, I planned my wedding, months. And then we got married actually almost a year ago now in September. And my wedding literally was all over the place. I think it's still, I'm like, I don't understand. But anyway, the engagement shoot went viral on Facebook, which was interesting. I was like, whoa, what's going on? And I think it was just great photography. But then the wedding was like featured on everywhere, like the Nache and, David's Bridal, like included me in one of their paid advertising with the Nache. And, they reposted me and tagged me. And that's really how I grew my following on the blog side of things. But also I used my wedding as almost like a foundation for weddings under Always Creating Studio. I know.
Oh, okay. So it's like kind of building, right? Okay.
Yeah. So now instead of people tagging Always Creating Blog, they're tagging Always Creating Studio.
Okay.
Again, two different audiences. And so I started to get into, I've always loved floral. You said that earlier, you like my flowers. I always have some sort of like floral element in my photos because I'd always loved doing it. Like, I think it always been there, but when I became a mom, I just remember always making these beautiful arrangements for her nursery. And it's just like every week I would be doing something with flowers. So I absolutely just love it. But that's how I got into like the whole wedding side of things. And it was a hobby because I had a job. I had a full-time job.
That's what I was going to ask. Were you still working full time?
Yes, I was still working full time. And this was just a fun, creative outlet with my blog, with my Instagram. Like I was like on this high of creativity, like every day. I'd go into work and like do all these like technical speak and like product development and like systems and building all these enterprises. It's very like technical driven. And as a woman in tech, as a woman of color in tech, like I thrived off of that, but then also coming home and then on the weekend or on the side, being able to also use my creativity to make things look beautiful, to enhance other people's brands and other companies' brands. It's just like, it's such an incredibly fulfilling type of side hustle that then became a full-time hustle. So
neat. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So
that's a lot, right? I talk a lot. I told you I talk a lot.
No, but this is all good stuff because I think people can see how doing something on the side as either a hobby or a side hustle can like morph and grow. And I think your path kind of shows that. You're not quite at the time, you weren't exactly sure where it would take you, but because of a series of events that happened, like for example, your wedding going viral, for you working with that photographer, all of a sudden this kind of like path was created for you.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's so important for all entrepreneurs, especially the creative ones, even those that are seasoned or up and coming or like kind of like mid-range, to know that like if you're trying to get from A to B, it just doesn't happen overnight. And there might be some opportunities that come up that you feel as though, well, that's not really in my wheelhouse. That's not really something I do. I say yes to it. Because if anything, you gain some sort of perspective or a new way of looking at things. You might meet someone at that particular networking event or that shoot that you just don't know how that might come back again, and even though I started like in 2016, I actually didn't go full-time until 2018 last year. And so it does take time. And I was very intentional in, allowing myself to literally go through the process, because I feel like in order to get from here to there, you have to go through. You can't go over or under. You can't sidestep it. You literally have to go through every single thing, like rejections. We don't want to hire you or whatever the case might be. You go through it, because all of that rejection, all of those things that you're going through are sort of like building blocks for, and steps to take you to where you ought to be, not where you think you want to be, but where you really ought to be. And I, didn't think I was going to start booking weddings. I mean, maybe a little bit. I was naive thinking, okay, I'm going to start booking weddings. But I was also like very patient in myself to booking someone today, tomorrow's another day. But I never gave up. And now I have probably like 15 weddings. And it's just like mind blowing, because now I have a team, and it's so interesting how much the business is really kind of like, in a way, in my own way, right, taken off. I didn't go try to do anything to speed up the process. I actually took 2018 to learn. I learned about the industry. I attended conferences. I went to a lot of networking events because I wanted to get to know the people within the industry, and I wanted to know what it was like. And I got to feel the social aspect of it, the culture of the industry, the vibe of the industry, the local people, how they react to me. And a lot of people, I have to tell you, were kind of like, who are you? And what are you doing here? That's the vibe I was getting. But I didn't let that stop me. I was just like, okay, fine, whatever. I'm still going to be the person that I am, kind, honest, welcoming, and with open arms. Like, I don't have a problem with you. You don't have a problem with me. You know what I mean? And I did have a lot of people that said, oh, just because you plan your own wedding doesn't mean you're going to be able to plan another person's wedding. And to which I replied, watch me. And I did. And so, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you just have to like stand really firm in your truth. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. And I think hearing that sort of allowed me to put on blinders, right? I put on blinders and I stayed super, super focused on what I was doing, what I wanted to do, because I could visualize the business in which I wanted for myself And I know that my heart was in the right place. And I knew that as long as I was doing the right thing and learning the right way and not just sitting here waiting for things to happen, I did style shoot. I helped another business do a style shoot so they can promote their new venue. Guess what? That put me on the preferred vendor list. And then I get referrals from them. You know what I mean? It's a win-win.
Right.
I was helping other people. Yes, half the time I was getting paid, half I wasn't. The other time I was making money from my blog, my influencer lives, because I still have clients that are corporate clients that pay me for just creating assets for their own social media, which is so interesting because it's like, I'm waiting for them to pay me so I can post on my social media. But then some of them are like, no, we don't want you to post. We just want you to create the photos and send them to us, and we will use them however we see fit in our marketing and our website or our app or whatever it is. I'm like,
okay.
You know what I mean? So, there's always something happening, and I'm always very open in my heart and my mind to so many different opportunities that I say yes, I stay focused, I keep moving forward, and I never give up no matter what anyone says or does. So, yeah.
Yeah, so no, that's good stuff. So I wanted to dig into, because a lot of times, people will start businesses or become entrepreneurs because either they want to make some money on the side or work for themselves full time. So how were you able to make that decision? Because that was a big decision, right? Last year to do this, to quit your very stable, right?
Well,
probably well-paid job.
Actually, the decision was made for me, believe it or not. And it sounds cliche, but it's like when one door closes, another opens. And so actually, I didn't quit my job. I would have loved to keep my job because paycheck was.
Okay.
I know people are not going to, I was saying the paycheck was so good. So I would have loved to keep my job. But because I was in government consulting, with government consulting, the contracts are usually like 3 years to 5 years. And so every 3 to 5 years, the contract comes up for recompete. And because I was a government contractor, the contract that I was under came up under recompete. The prime on the contract, we're getting more consulting here. I'm sorry if some people don't know some of these, but the prime lost the contract. And so about 20 to 30 of us literally lost our jobs because now the new scope of work did not include people like myself, like the technical product managers or specific kind of development, in software development. And so it was a whole different approach. That's something that you can't stop from happening because that's just the nature of it. And as somebody who's worked in IT for, 21 years, this happens to me all the time. I always lose jobs and I get jobs. It's the nature of it. We don't obviously want it, but that's what ended up happening. And so literally after coming back from my honeymoon in October of 2017, I came to find out that the decision was final and that we didn't win and all this other stuff because I had left and went away from my honeymoon. And I was like, I was sad, but then I was like, okay, well, I just have to get my company to find me another project that I'm going to go and continue doing what I was doing and also finding other new opportunities. But then nothing ever came. So I was like, what is happening? And since this was in October, so we're now getting into the holiday season. I actually, and we had known about it since March, you know what I mean? They started, we'd known about it the year prior. So, but it never came, which is always the case because the date will come, then they would extend until they figure out all the logistics, until they figure out the vetting process for whatever they were doing. It's the federal government. You just never know. And so, so when it came, I was expecting it, sad, but I was also expecting it. But then I figured, you know what? I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I am actually going to keep looking for work. And I kept looking for work in my field. But then I also thought to myself, well, what if that doesn't happen? What if I don't find a job in 6 months? I mean, I have money saved up, right? I wasn't worried so much about like the financial aspect of it, a little bit, because it's like I'm a newlywed, I'm a mom, we have a family. You know what I mean? Obviously, yes, that's there. But at the same time, I was thinking, I work in tech, so if I don't quickly come back into the industry, knowledge, like it's like night and day, because technology changes so quickly. So you have to always stay in the field and keep learning and keep going. So if you come out of it, it makes it a little bit difficult to come back in, because your knowledge becomes like almost obsolete. And it's not, but it is. So I just made a plan and I said, 6 months, if I don't find something, this is what I'm going to do. And I actually also, I'm very like spiritual. So I actually did, say a prayer. And I said, if God wants me to go back into that line of work, I will find work. Because I'd always, maybe 6 months, the longest I've gone without work growing up. And so I knew I was giving myself that 6 months. Like, if God wants me to continue in that path of being a technical product manager, right, whether it's working for the federal government or some other organization, then that will come. Mom always does a good job of telling me, if you are meant to be somewhere, when God says you're going to be there, that's where you're going to be. And it doesn't matter what other people say. That's where you're going to be. So I'd always had that in the back of my mind. But at the same time, I'm always like planning for something else. So I said, well, how can I then pivot my side hustle, my hobby, into perhaps something that could earn me income? And thankfully, at the time, I like to say I was at the height of like my influencer game, because I was getting a lot of like brand partnerships, paid work. That was incredible work. And I also was getting some design work from Always Creating Studio that was paid, corporate work. So I had money coming in to keep going. But that's really when I, holiday season 2017, because I got laid off, I was able to really just put my head down and figure out what's that. If it doesn't work out, how can I take this and turn it into something? What can I do? So I started like just brainstorming, because I'm not one to like, you can't beat me and let me stay down. I'm going to figure out a way to keep going. You know what I mean? Like, that's just glory. I'm going to keep going. That's just, so I figure out how I can, make a living. And then that's really when I rebranded the first time. And then I went from being a stylist to like a designer. And thank God, Esme, I have to give you her, Esme, she works at Boda Maestra Weddings, and she gave me a chance to design a wedding with her. She's a wedding planner. And she called me and she says, hey, I'm doing this wedding and the bride is really young and I'm really great with like the business aspect of things. I really love planning and the management of wedding management, but the design, I like it, but I don't like to do it. Would you like to come and help me design this wedding? And so I was like, oh, I can design weddings.
Right. Instead of planning it.
Right. So I did that for a while, gradually. I did that for about a year. And then last year, when I hadn't found any job, I was like, okay, if God really wanted me to find a job, I would have found one by now. But I'm so glad that I didn't wait until now to figure that out, to get that message, that I like made plans with Always Creating Studio to be able to move forward. And so, full time last year, I didn't give up on looking for a job. I still do. But honestly, the way that my business has kind of like taken off, it's like, it lets me know that God really wanted me to be here to begin with. You know what I mean? Which is so interesting, because he put that post in front of me in 2015, before I discovered Rising Tide Society, right? And so, 3-4 years later, I didn't even know I was going to end up here. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, that's how I look at it. It sounds, crazy, but yeah, the decision was made for me to, leave my job. I didn't want to, but, I know it can be hard to, walk away from a job that you absolutely love, that makes income, especially if you have a family. But honestly, I would say keep working at it, keep your job, do your job. When you're doing your job and you have a side hustle, do your job really, really well. Do your job fantastically well. If I learn anything, actually, if I could go back and maybe change something, this might be helpful for those that are maybe still
For
working,
sure.
their 9 to 5 and maybe doing the side hustle. I would say start saving now. Like save more than you're already doing now, as much as you can. I know it can be incredibly difficult, but if you are in a position where you make, substantial amount of money, I would say like start saving that now so that, when you get to a place where, God forbid, you lose your job like I did, you can still carry yourself financially while ramping up now full-time your side hustle, which is really what I did. You know what I mean? But if you can save. If I could go back and do any one thing over, it would be to save. And I would highly encourage you to, if you are, thinking about a year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you want to go full-time, start now to do all the, foundational work. Make sure you have a website, a really clean, beautiful, brand-focused website that really speaks to who you are, what you do, and most importantly, speak to the person that you're trying to sell your product and or services to. And then, hone in on what your brand is. What is it that you're about? Why are you doing it? We're all hearing about your why. Figure out what that is and start writing that down. Figure out what your mission is. Figure out what your values are, not just your personal values, but your, business values, because that's going to help you attract the right type of client. You know what I mean? And start doing all of those like foundational work for your side hustle, because when it comes time for you to go full time, you're not going to have time to be doing all that stuff because there's going to be a lot happening. So the more that you can do and chip away a little bit at a time, the better. And, practice. If you really want to get good at something, keep doing it every day, day in, day out, and put on blinders, stay focused. Foundation is so key because honestly, without a solid foundation, it's so easy for someone or something to kick you off your balance, right? So having a solid foundation to be able to stand on, and not just like, I'm not just talking like physical balance. I'm talking about, the things I just mentioned earlier, like having the right logo, having the right website, having the right wording, having the right, all those things, your business license, your EIN number, your, whatever it is, you have to have all of those done. And then also like mental foundation, right? Because you can see something on Instagram and say, well, why am I not doing that? And that could easily throw you off balance mentally and cause you to go into some emotional spin. And you're just like, why am I not? That's never going to be, because honestly, no one has time for that. There's only one you, and there'll never be another you. So unless you're a twin, even twins, they still have So yeah, don't let those kinds of things like kind of bring you down. But yeah.
So just a few wrap-up questions. The first one is, how do you stay organized? Do you have any techniques, software, tools, or anything like that you recommend?
Yes, I actually have a few. So I have a team. I have people that are like, they don't come in here into the office. Like sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So we have to have like different tools that we use to kind of stay in touch besides texting and calling. For me personally, I actually love first and foremost, let me say, people don't like to say this, but my phone.
It's a useful tool. Yeah.
It's so obvious, but my phone. Because I lost my phone. I didn't lose it. Like something happened and I couldn't access my phone for like 2 days. It was the worst 2 days ever in terms of like my business. That like my phone is huge because I do everything on my phone. So my phone is always like my number one like productivity like kind of tool that I use. I use this every day. Another thing that I use is a notes app on my phone. And I love that. And people don't think about it as being like productive, but for me it is because I'm always creating. Get it?
Yeah.
I'm always having I'm always having all these ideas and things I have to do when people I have to talk to or emails I have to write. And so I can use my Google Voice app to write myself notes and send them to myself. So when I get back to my desk, I can just copy and paste in an email and send it. So my notes app is hugely important to me, and it's a great productivity tool for me personally that I found has worked. I save everything on there. And I back it up so that if I get a new phone, I just sync it and I get all my notes again. Another tool that my team and I use a lot is Slack. We use that when they're in the office, when they're away, they can upload documents, download documents. We actually create a Slack space for each one of our weddings so that we can keep our communication really specific so they're not all jumbled. So if you want to know about, Kate and Paul, you can go to the Kate and Paul Slack and get all the notes and everything you need to know there. So Slack is huge for us here. Also Skype, which we're using right now. I actually, I sometimes will interview or maybe talk to clients that are in Boston or New York and they're looking to hire me. And so because we can't meet face to face, we set up Skype or Google Hangout and we just kind of talk about their wedding and how I can support them on that day or, leading up to that day. So Skype is a huge tool that I love to use. Another tool that I use for my business is Aisle Planner. It's more like a planning tool. I mean, other creatives can use it. You can set it up to basically, especially if you do product rental, you can also put in photos with your invoices, and it's a really, really tool. And so every single one of our weddings, they have their own personalized projects. So everything from that checklist to the calendar to, contacts, the vendors, the budget, everything is all in Aisle Planner and it's web-based. So my team can really access each one of those folders and projects from wherever they are. And I can also do so on my phone. Another tool that I use is Clockify. So, for me to book more client, actually one thing that I did was I found Clockify. And every single time I do something, I have to document what I did, how long I did it for. So before starting to talk to you on the phone, I would click start and I'll put the description and I have different project categories. So every single wedding, even if I'm emailing them or looking at the proposals or researching vendors or whatever it is, or talking to somebody on the phone relating to that particular wedding, I start and end the clock so that way I can actually look back and see how much time am I spending on this bride and groom versus this bride and groom versus this person. Even personal errands, I track them. Even if I'm going downstairs to take my dogs out, I track too and I turn it on and off because I want to be able to look at how am I spending my time? Am I spending my time doing a bunch of crap that I could just not sit here, but take time and go do that and then come back and really focus in on work? And also, it's so important when a client comes back and says, well, I don't know what you've been doing for me, blah, blah, blah. Then I can say, well, I'm glad you asked. Right. So I can put the report and do that. And my team, they all use Clockify to track everything that they're doing. So, there's some my favorite, everyday productivity apps and software that I use on the desktop and on my phone. So. Yeah.
Very cool. Oh my God, I won't even start in on it because we are like kindred spirits. And then I'm definitely going to look into Clockify because I usually tell people to try out, there's a ding.io, because I always tell people, in order to make time for your passion, you have to figure out where your time is going. And if you don't know what you're doing, then that's why it feels like all the time, you don't have time to do the things that are important to you. When really, you're just...
I don't have time. I don't have time. You do. Just track what you're doing, even for a day or a week.
Right.
You'll see where your time is going. You're going to be like, oh, wow.
Exactly. But yes.
I love tools, especially working for myself. Yes, I have a team. But they're very project specific, I feel like. But at the end of the day, I'm still the owner. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I do stuff. So I have other tools that I've implemented to literally streamline my life. And I don't even stress about any of that stuff anymore. So
Good for
Yeah.
you. And
Thank
then,
you.
so you got like a lot going on. Like you got always
I do.
creating is like digital, studio, blog. Do you have like a hobby? Like, what do you
My
do
life
when you're
is
not
my
working?
hobby.
Right.
Listen, when you have created and cultivated and built a life that you truly want, it it you don't need a hobby. You just live contently in it. You know what I mean? And you know, I'm in my late 30s. I mean, I'm going to be 40 next year. So I'm just in a different space mentally, as you know, most people would be, you know, being 39. But you know, I feel like my life, I always say my life is a vacation. Like I always say my life is, you know, people always joke, oh, Instagram highlight, you know, reel of their lives. Like, no, Instagram doesn't even begin
Love it.
to describe just how amazing my life is. If I posted everything, you would be like, okay, I hate you, go away. But that took a lot of work and time to build that life where you're in a place where you feel like if your life is better than what you're posting on Instagram, then imagine what my life really is like.
Right.
And so for me, honestly, my hobby is I'm working in it every day.
Doing what you love.
I just love it. But if I really had to pick a hobby, it would be more maybe like, you know, something with florals, because my brain, it calms it down, it centers me, and I just let it. I'm actually going to be doing some floral arrangements for our neighbor for a baby shower tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to it because it's just one of those things that I just love being with the flowers and just letting it speak to me. So, I mean, I think like floral arrangement or floral design is my hobby, but really my life is my hobby. My work, always creating studio, weddings, and event is my hobby.
Oh, love it.
You know what I mean?
No, I 100% get what you're saying. You know, I always tell people,
don't you think so? I mean, what about you? Don't you think like what you're doing creatively with your journals and your businesses and your podcasts, don't you feel like these are all things that started out as a hobby and it still continues to be? It's just like you're using it in a more impactful, meaningful way to touch lives. And that's beyond a hobby. So it just makes it feel like, wow, your life is your hobby because you're using it to impact other people's lives in a very beautiful way. I'm using wedding planning to impact couples that are getting married in a beautiful, joyous way. You know what I mean?
No, I get 100%. I actually, at the beginning of this year, just turned 41. And I'll tell you, there's more clarity you even get. I thought like 30s, I was like, I know myself. Like,
I'm the same way. Clarity,
but I was like, no. I was like, I was getting to know myself. But like, when I became 40, I was just like, no, and you know, you hear women who've turned 50 and they say it's like even more enlightening, you know? So I'm like, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. But I think I'm in a good place in my life where, you know, I worked really hard in my 30s to become debt free, right? And I've worked really hard to get to a place where I could just do the things I love and I have freedom in my choices. And that's, I always tell women like that is so important to know that you can do whatever you choose what you want to do. If I want to go to Greece next month, all I have to do is literally go to Orbitz, hit the button and fly there, right? If I want to make art this weekend because it's fun or I want to take a class, I just do it. There's nothing that is like holding me back. Like it's really just making sure that I'm trying to live my best life the best way I can. And
it's so important.
You know, so I 100% agree with you. Like I always tell people I'm a very multi-passionate person because I just love creating and I just love trying new things. And that's what makes me happy, you know?
Right. When you're doing genuinely what makes you happy, you cannot want or need anything. You just feel so content. in where you are and you have clarity, and like clarity is a good word because like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I always tell
So
people, yeah, and I always tell people too, like, like life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, right? Because some people are like,
yeah,
oh my God, everything's always so great. And I'm like, no, but what I do is like, if I realize that there's something in my life that needs to change, then I figure out what I need to do to pivot. And even if it takes time, it's okay. But at least I'm like, you know what? Something's not right. I need to change something.
maybe we might have to do another one of these, but on a more like philosophical like level where we're really just sitting around. You know what I think you should do? You should have all of your previous guests do like almost like a round table, have them come together and just talk about like life in general, because I feel, but only for a specific group of ages,
Yeah.
because it's so important to have these kinds of conversations, because a lot of people honestly are not built like that, like innately not like that. They might be, but it takes them longer to come to this place because they're afraid or something, or they haven't heard other people talk about it that way. You know what I mean? Especially like with creatives, all we talk about is our businesses, our businesses, our businesses, but equally as important is our mental focus.
Yeah.
It's our mental health, and being able to share our experiences on a personal mental level is actually, I feel as though, equally as important to talking about business as well.
Correct. I absolutely agree. I agree.
Just so someone can say, "Oh, she, well, she," just like you said, I have clarity, and I'm like, yes, that's the word I'm looking for, because that's what that when you ask me that, not that my life is like, perfect. My life is just right. It's like I still have like, I have a 7-year-old. She drives me nuts all the time sometimes. But at the same time, she gives me hugs and everything feels good. Right. I have my dogs. They drive me nuts, but I love them. So like, nothing is like perfect, but you make an effort. When something is not going right, you change and you figure out, how can I change it? Don't linger in it.
Yeah.
You might for a little bit, let your feelings feel it, because you have to go through it. But then you immediately come out of it and figure out, okay, what can I do now? But you can't go back to it. You just got to keep going, because you go back to it, it makes Just got to see. We need another one of these.
Yes, we do. We gotta. I know we do. Yes. We do. I'm going to make it happen. I'll make it happen.
Please. we honestly do, because we don't talk about women's mental health.
Yeah. I agree.
There's so many obligations and so many things we have to do for other people. But sometimes we just want to sit around and talk like women, to talk about what's happening and just be real, not like knocking other people for what they're doing, but just talking about, this is how it was like for me. So that somebody else who is, I'm 39, you're 41. Now I can say, yes, that's what I'm going through. And now I know there's more of this to come, right?
Yeah.
Because as you get older, like you said, you're 41. I have a couple more years to get there. Then I know if I keep doing what I'm doing now, then there's more of that to come. Right. Same thing with people in their 30s. If other people have gotten there faster and they're talking about their experiences, someone can say, okay, that gives me hope, because I know maybe what to expect, and also learn all these skills to be able to, implement in their lives to have that mental shift, so that when something happens, how do you then pivot? Right? How do you mentally get yourself
the strength? Yes, we will. I'm gonna make it happen. People, you've heard it here on the podcast. I'm committing to doing this.
Yes. So excited.
But Glory, this has been great. Can you tell the listeners, if they're like, oh my God, I need more of Glory, where can they find you?
Where can we find me? Oh, well, I am on Instagram at Always Creating Studio. You can also find me at Always Creating Blog. Or Always Creating Digital. So very easy, Always Creating Blog, Studio, Digital on Instagram. You can also find me on my website at alwayscreatingstudio.com or alwayscreatingblog.com. you can also send me an email if you have any questions or, need to explore further about your business and see, how I can support you, whether that's just listening to where you are or what you want to do. You can always email me, glory@alwayscreatingstudio.com. And or DM me or
All right. Well, thank you, Glory. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is so fun.
Oh my goodness. So, Glory, amazing. I could have talked to her all day long. I just love talking to her. I hope you guys got some nuggets out of this episode. She mentioned a lot of things from Clockify to Owl Planner to Slack. You can head over to nachesnow.com/93 in order to get the links to all the things that she mentioned. And that is nachesnow.com/93. Also, if you know someone that you think would benefit from listening to this, please share the podcast with them, this episode with them, episode 93. Sharing is caring, right? And last, I just want to say I love her tips for kind of like your foundational work for creating a side hustle, right? Start saving money now. I cannot stress this enough, people. Even if it's just $1 a day, if that's all you can afford, start saving now because you just never know. You just never, never, ever know when you might need that extra cushion, right? For some reason, you might love your job, but you have to move out of town, right? And which forces you to start up a new side hustle or just live off of what you have, right? She also mentions have a clean, beautiful, brand focused website. This is key. If you have a website now and you're not getting sales, you're not even getting newsletter sign-ups, that might be an indication that one, you're pushing the wrong people to your website, or if you think the right people are on your website but they're not buying or signing up for your newsletter, it might just mean your content isn't resonating with them and encouraging them to really take action. So really kind of think about how your website is set up and if it really is brand focused. The third thing she mentioned is knowing your business values, right? And that kind of, to me, ties directly into your website too, because once you know your business values, it's going to translate in everything you do. Social media, your website, how you present your business to other people, but you need to know the values of your business. And then last but not least, she says, get good at something, practice it day in and day out. This is so key. If you want to be good at something, you can't do it every once in a while. You have to do it constantly, right? Even when I think about my hand lettering that I do for my journals, people are like, oh my goodness, how are you able to do that? Well, I took a Skillshare course and I looked at some YouTube videos and I started following people on Instagram. And not only did I just look at this stuff and follow it, I actually almost every day in the beginning made sure I did some kind of hand lettering project. And over time, as I got better, I might not have been doing it every day, but I hand letter almost every single week, multiple times a week. And the more I do it, the better I get at it. And so that's for anything you do, right? You want to get good at something, then you have to do it often in order to make sure that you eventually become an expert in it. So, anywho, thank you for dropping those gems, Glory. And all of you, thank you for listening to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. And if you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. Enjoy all of these wonderful women doing extraordinary things. All right, until next week, people, take care. Have a beautiful week.